Today's conversation is sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners.
Give yourself an opportunity to not rush into things. And I think that that's probably the biggest mistake and the biggest risk that people are making is they feel this sense of urgency, and it's mostly fabricated. If someone is telling you have to buy it now, you have to don't listen to them. They're a salesperson, they're a used car salesman. Don't let anyone ever pressure you into doing something that you're not comfortable with.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels, the #1 podcast for long-distance real asset investing.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And yes, I am your host, Billy Keels, and today's conversation is absolutely amazing. You're going to love it. You're really going to love it. If you want to hear two long-distance practitioners talking about things that are going to help you move forward faster, busy, high-paid professionals, going to love it. If you're looking to be active, passive, this is a conversation you're really going to want to get your pen, get your paper, get your iPad and pen out, whatever, because you're going to want to take notes, copious notes, and then listen and then share. So listen, also, the podcast continues to move up the charts. Really appreciate you. And if you have not had an opportunity to leave your honest written review as well as rating, would appreciate that, especially on the Apple Podcast platform. We've made a short little video for you to be able to watch and just go right through that. Really would appreciate the things that you like, the things that you want to see more of, the things you want to see less of, so that we can continue to bring you the best content possible so that you can get closer to your goals much faster. Also, if you're looking for previous episodes, we're well over 210 episodes at this point in time. Go to billykeels.com. Once you get there, the screen's going to change a little bit. Go to the podcast tab, click that there, and you will be able to very quickly find every single episode that you've ever wanted to see. And lastly, if you're an accredited investor, especially if you're getting crushed by W-2 taxes, send me an email, aiclub@billykeels.com. Would love to talk to you, connect you with some other accredited investors, aiclub@billykeels.com. And listen, today's conversation, I think they say is fire. You're really going to enjoy this one. Long distance, remote investing. We're going to talk about this with a guy who has he understands all of the theory. He's also been a practitioner, and he's also going to the next level, being a formal educator, helping people to understand the ins and outs of long distance investing, making sure that they have as much of the information and they have the hand holding that's necessary. I know you're going to get a lot out of today's conversation with Michael Albaum, and we're going to get to that just after this. So, you know what? If you want to know how to successfully navigate the long distance investing landscape, even with technology, then guess what? Today's the conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. I've got a strong feeling about this, everybody. You know why? Because today's guest not only started his career as a high rope specialist. That sounds super cool, by the way. He also went to work in the engineering as well as heavy equipment industries. That sounds cool because sounds like real assets to me. He also was a consultant engineer helping B2B clients with cost-efficient and effective solutions. That's something that I like. And today he is the head real estate coach at Roofstock Academy. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Mr. Michael Albaum. Michael, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks so much, Billy. Really appreciate you having me on.
Listen to this, everybody. I don't know if you're watching the video version or not, but just the smile on Michael's face, the smile on my face. I mean, I'm just really looking forward to today's conversation. Great conversation, pre-conversation, and it's got a lot of awesome things going on. So, Michael, I just want to jump right into this, man, because you know already, I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to get 2 in the beginning. You're going to get 3 in the end. And in the middle, you're going to get a whole bunch of other questions. I think probably a whole lot today. I just don't know what those questions are. So listen, the very first thing is help us understand, where is it that you live in the U.S.?
So I live in Northern California, 45 minutes northeast, of San Francisco. So I'm an LA guy originally, went to school on the Central Coast, now living up in the Bay Area, and lived in a van for a while. So I was kind of bounced all over the place. But today you caught me up in the Bay.
Oh, we caught you up in the Bay today. Okay. All right. Sounds great. Appreciate that. Listen, the other thing is, Michael, what's the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
Such a good question, Billy. My wife and I just found out within the last 24 hours that our neighbors are actually possibly selling their home. And we would be very interested in buying it as a new primary. So we're pretty excited about that opportunity.
Oh, fantastic, man. That's always nice. That's very, very cool. All right. Awesome. So appreciate you sharing that. And Michael, I need to make a confession.
Shoot, lay it on me.
Listen, man. So I tend to have a really, really I held a high standard, and sometimes to my own fault, because I try to do things that are sometimes really impossible. And what do I mean by that? Like trying to tell your entire backstory in 2.5 seconds. Nah, it wasn't going to happen, right? Because you've done way too many things. You've impacted way too many lives. But it's kind of that recovering perfectionist in me. I try to do these kinds of things. So hopefully you will forgive me for trying to do something that is so absurd. But more importantly,
absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I also am going to ask you for a favor. Can you help me? And that really means could you help me by you telling your own backstory in your own words? And I also have one little favor to ask. If you could talk about maybe some of the major decisions that you've made to get to this point in your journey while you're telling your backstory, that would be really, really helpful for me as well as the Going Long family. So
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Over to you, man. Let's hear your story.
So was born and raised Southern California, went to school on the Central Coast of California, and did the very traditional thing that I think so many of your listeners may have done. Go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and then you'll be taken care of. And so I did all those things, got that great job, and said, okay, I'm set. Like I did it. I did all the things. Now I just need to coast. Well, like so many of your listeners probably realized it wasn't the case. Like it didn't lead to Easy Street. It wasn't all of the things I had yet to do. So got a hold of this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I'm sure many of your listeners have read as well. And I was like, oh, real estate is this thing that just kind of made sense to me from a financial standpoint, because I was a professional engineer. I lived and worked in spreadsheets. And so you're a recovering perfectionist. I'm a recovering engineer. So I speak in equations and math. And so I was just started running the numbers on real estate. And I said, I don't know how to do this, but I understand like how it works, like the inner workings of it. And so I spent about 2 years getting self-educated, consuming as much information as I could. Podcasts weren't really huge in my life at that point. Bigger Pockets wasn't around. Roofstock wasn't around. And so I just had to kind of piece it together for myself. Ended up buying my first investment property back in 2014. And when that first rent check showed up, I'm like, ding, I'm a genius. I discovered, gravity. I'm like the best thing since sliced bread. And of course that wasn't the case, but for me, it was so impactful. Yeah. And I said, okay, if I can do this once per year for 10 years, in 10 years, I'll have 10 properties. And that sounded good, because that's just an arbitrary number, whole, even. And so I started doing that for a couple of years, buying one a year, saving as much as I could. And so you asked about some of the decisions that I made. I lived in a house with like 5 dudes. I was working a full-time job, earning a great engineering salary. And people would look at me and like, Michael, can't you afford your own place? And the answer was a resounding yes. But my wife called it the frat castle, because it was actually a duplex. And it was a 5-bed, 4-bath duplex on each side. So it was like 10 beds. We didn't know the other side tenants, but there was a lot of people living in this structure, all working full time, earning great salaries in the Bay Area, but deciding to do things a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. So I was very intentional about living below my means. I wasn't buying designer clothes. The company that I worked for paid for a lot of my life expenses. So they paid for my house, my car, my cell phone, my internet, and I was on the road constantly. And so I just didn't have a lot of life expenses. And so I said, let me funnel all of that towards investing in real estate. And so it was super, super, super intentional about doing that. Fast forward a couple more years, I actually lost my dad to pancreatic cancer, unfortunately. And so thank you. So that he was an insurance broker his entire career. And so he had some life insurance. He said whenever he had a slow day at work, he would just buy himself a life insurance policy, because he would make the commission on it. And then it would kind of insure his family from financial difficulty when he wasn't there anymore. And so when that happened, I said, okay, this is something I really need to focus on quite a bit more, and made the leap in 2019 into investing full-time. I left my 9-to-5 job. I said, hey, I need some time to kind of reset mentally. And they said, no, thanks. And I said, okay, well then, no, thanks. Don't need to be here anymore. Yeah. So that decision, I think, was one of the most impactful as well, because I realized I had spent the last 6-7 years building up this portfolio that was now able to support my wife and I, because we no longer needed a job. Yeah. Fast forward a little bit, I had 2 fires in a commercial building that I was doing some development on. And I said, I need a job again. I need some more money. So I went back to the workforce, but was doing it all remote, traveling with my wife across the country and internationally. And yet here I find myself today working at Roofstock, helping educate people on how to invest in real estate.
Wow, man, there's so many just really interesting nuggets that, like, I want to ask you a million and a half things. So, but you talked about the last thing. So you're in a point now where you've not only done it, i.e. investing in real estate, you've done it remotely. Now you're helping to educate other people to do that. Mm-hmm. You also talked about, your father as someone who is not working in real estate. And I'm just curious, because one of the things I was never exposed to real estate at all, but did you have some type of exposure, or I guess what was the exposure that you had to real estate before you decided that this was an asset that you wanted to, in fact, invest your time and energy and eventually capital in?
Yeah, I did. And so growing up, we had a little bit of exposure, just in the sense of so my grandpa, that's a whole nother story, but he wrote a book. He was a World War II POW in Germany, ended up saving some Hungarian women, got connected with their brother. His brother said, I'm going to take very good care of you, and set him up with some liquor stores in Southern California. And that was like my family's first beginnings into real estate. And so my dad was involved with that a little bit, but just very much on the side. And so it was very similar for our family. It was something that he did very much on the side as a passive kind of project. So I'd always knew about it in the sense of that was something he did on the side, but insurance was what we talked about at the dinner table and at home.
Okay. All right. So you did have that kind of in the background, right?
Totally.
So you had that in the background. You had some understanding, even though it was more side hustle. It wasn't the main thing.
Yep.
And I'm just I'm so excited about this thing because I know exactly how you've taken it from the theory to the practitioner and helping others. When I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and a lot of people read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then you go down this rabbit hole, you read the whole series, and then you start listening to podcasts and you start watching videos and all that kind of stuff. They weren't big when I started doing this remote or long distance investing either. But one of the things that always struck me was it seemed like it was going to be really cool because it was you're going to earn $200-300 a door, just need to get more doors. And it's kind of like that math that you went through. I went through very, very similar math.
Yeah.
And the thing that happens is eventually I start realizing, well, look, everyone wants you to be the landlord. And I thought, yeah, but for a number of different reasons, I ended up not investing here where I live in Barcelona and started doing that long distance. What I quickly realized is that's super contrarian because most people are well, you have to live in the same place where you invest.
Right.
And I'm not saying that you can't do that, but the reason that this whole podcast exists is because you can live wherever you want, i.e. in Europe, and invest exclusively in the US. That's what I choose to do. But it could be for a lot of people that you live in California and you invest somewhere else. But it's super contrarian. And so I'm curious as to why you not only were someone and is someone who can live in one place and invest somewhere else, but that you've decided to also help other people do this thing that is very contrarian. Can you help us understand that?
It's a really good question. So I got my start investing in a market that I knew in Southern California. And you made a confession earlier, Billy, that you had trouble sharing someone's background in 2.5 seconds. I've got to make a confession too. The company that I worked for, I shared with you, paid for a lot of my travel, or they paid for all of my travel whenever I was working. My territory was the Northwest US.
Okay.
So I was traveling to all these different markets. And because I was now a real estate investor with one property under my belt, I'm, like I said, a rock star genius at this stage in the game. I was just looking at all these different markets. And so I was physically going to these places and could meet with property managers because I would set my own schedule. And so if you're listening, my old boss, Dave, thanks so much for the free time. So I would get set up with property managers and agents before I went. Gotcha. I would look at Zillow and check it out. So I had the ability to physically be there on the ground myself and see these things. And it wasn't until a little bit later in my career that I was able to totally buy things sight unseen, having never been to the market. But once I started, what I realized is that just the dollar goes so much further in other markets outside California. And so for you, it's clearly outside Barcelona. For anyone else listening, it could be outside their particular market they live in. The dollar could just go further, whatever currency they're using. Mm. And so I said, if the purchase price is less and the rent to purchase price ratio is more, it becomes a no-brainer. And so because I was an engineer, I said, I'm going to let the numbers do the decision-making for me. So it just made mathematical sense to go to other places.
Awesome. So the mathematical sense that it made for you, who had the engineer's mind, you also had the opportunity to be in the location, build your network. You were also very efficient with your time because you knew you were going to a place and you said, hey, listen, I know I'm going to be working X number of hours. So outside of when I'm working, I'm going to set up these other meetings rather than watching TV or doing this or doing that. You're just very efficient with your time, which I think is absolutely fantastic. One of the benefits of also traveling for business. But so you're at this point and you are realizing that your dollar goes further somewhere else. Even the euro to dollar exchange is also something that I'm sure that we'll talk about a bit more.
Oh, yes.
But talk to us about the whole, so you're starting to do this. A lot of times people don't have that engineer's brain that say, okay, the numbers make sense because there's a thing of, there's a distance. Like I lived in Barcelona and there was the Atlantic Ocean. So no matter how great the numbers were, sometimes people get blocked and can't move beyond that. So you're helping to educate people today. So I'm wondering what you say to those individuals that they're on the fence. I wouldn't say that they're absolutely against investing long distance, but they just start trying to figuring out, look, I need some more things. Yeah, the numbers look great, but what should I be thinking about as well? Because the place is like thousands of miles away.
Yeah, it's such a good question, Billy. And it's something I get all the time in chatting with folks. So I was at a meetup and there was a speaker there. I think it was David Green from Bigger Pockets.
Yep.
And he was talking about, someone asked him this exact same question. What he said to me just totally stuck with me and very resounding and impactful. And so he said, hey, look, when you're driving your car down the freeway or the highway and it starts smoking, everyone does the same thing. They pull over, they get out, and what do? They pop the hood. And unless that person's a car mechanic, they have no idea what they're looking at. And so it's the same thing in real estate. You can physically go to the property and see that, yes, it's still there, it exists. But unless you're a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter or some in the trades, you're not going to know if there's a problem. You're not going to be able to diagnose something and determine what the solution is. That's what you have experts for. That's why we take our cars to the mechanics. So you can have these people do the things that they're experts at on your behalf. And today we have FaceTime, we've got Skype, we've got all these various technology tools that we can use to essentially bring us to that locale. The other thing that I share with people, Billy, is that you can't unsee and unexperience a lot of things when you go somewhere. So if someone goes and it's like, okay, I want to invest in Cincinnati, Ohio. They take a trip out there and they go to a restaurant and they have really bad service and the food sucks and they bump into someone on the street and that person just swears at them and it turns it whatever. They're like, man, Cincinnati sucks, independent of what the real estate market is like. And so when you're doing this remotely, it allows you to be so much more objective than actually having a subjective opinion. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're the kind of person that says, Michael, I can't get my head around that. I can't pull the trigger. I can't take a leap of faith. If what's stopping you from investing is physically not being there, then go there, have the experience, but know that you're not going to be able to unsee and unexperience things. So I hope for everyone listening that they have a marvelous experience. It's a wonderful place and it happens to pencil out from a numbers perspective. That's like the best case scenario. But if that's not you, there are other ways to do it. And there are tons of people doing it every single day of the week.
Yeah. I love the way that you shared that. And it's also too, I mean, and like I said, there's sometimes I'm sure you see this, that's the person that's on the fence. There are some people that just absolutely do not want to do that. And because neither you, Michael, or I am going to try to convince someone that that is the thing to do because it's something that's a positive experience for us, well, maybe it's not the thing for you right now. But
Right.
when you see everyone else doubling and tripling and quadrupling up in terms of the number of assets and getting themselves closer to freedom, it may be something that you at least want to start to consider.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you're helping to educate others. There is also a part of what you do that has to do with, let's say, life, because everything is not just work, at least in my opinion. I have a strange feeling that you might believe something similar.
I share the sentiment. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
right. Okay, cool. So if you think about then how the different assets that you have now chosen to help to build a lifestyle, how are you finding this? I don't know if balance is the right word, but maybe an alignment with what you enjoy doing and how it supports a lifestyle that you are creating or building. Can you maybe talk a little bit to that?
Absolutely. And I think it's something that I personally didn't didn't recognize was important for a long time.
Mm.
And so I spent the vast majority of my investing career acquiring, building, being in growth mode, as I call it. I had this goal for myself to acquire 100 units and I think that was totally ego driven. And I heard other people talk about their unit count and I was like, yeah, like more is better. And I came across a guy named Chad Carson, who's an author. He's a coach. He's just a wonderful dude. And he wrote an article and we were chatting about it. And he talked about a couple different scenarios. And basically what it boiled down to is that bigger isn't always better. And there are different ways to do things and you have to figure out what works best for you. And so I was on this growth conquest, and it was just like my mental bandwidth was so tied up with real estate stuff. I was in Costa Rica, like I wasn't enjoying myself. I'm like, this is stupid. So I decided to offload a bunch of stuff and I tried to get leaner and do more with less. And now I'm at a point in my career, thankfully, where I ground so much out that I don't have to go into growth mode, but now I can really choose assets and investments that really align with my lifestyle and my life's goals and my wife and I's goals and plans for our future. And so if it doesn't feel easy, we tend to pass on it. Whereas 4 or 5, 6 years ago, if it wasn't easy, I'm like, that's the investment for me because other people don't want it. So it's definitely shifted quite a bit. And I think that people need to, if I had done this years ago, I think I would be, I'd have more mental bandwidth to spare. And so I think thinking about that and being really intentional with your investments throughout your investing career, I can't overemphasize the importance of that enough.
Yeah, Michael, you know what? And being able to have that insight from you is very useful. But I'd like to unpack that a little bit because it's something that resonates with me a lot. I was working 2 jobs, very demanding corporate job, and doing this side hustle, right? And very similar. Like it was, I don't come from money. So this was like the thing for me, which was like, I've got to do this because I can get control over it much more than the stock market. And right. I was hyper focused on that. But one of the things you said is, if you would have known, you said 2 things, but the one that really rang out is you said, if it's not easy now, you don't want to really do it. What did you mean by that? Just so people understand just the context when you say, if it's not easy, you don't want to do it versus the thing that was really hard that you really ran to before.
Yeah, totally. And I think I'm so glad that you're kind of bringing this back up again, because I think the context in which I said it needs to be reframed. So now I've done like a bunch of dumb stuff. Like, let's just be straight up about it. Dumb stuff that I shouldn't have taken on because I was too big for my britches. My eyes were bigger than I could actually handle. So I took on tons of total gut rehabs from remote on multifamily properties at the same time. That was dumb. That was not something that I should have done. That was something I had no business doing. One at a time, maybe. Yeah. Doing multiple at a time, ridiculous. And so I was project managing these. I had a contract on a property manager, but I was like the one guy running the show here.
In very different geographic locations?
I was in like Nicaragua and I was in Panama, and this was all in the States. So like just way over my head, but I was so eager to grow that I said, whatever, I can do it. And so I think the things that feel easy for me now are different than what were easy for me then. Yeah. And so like now I don't take on as many value add physical rehab projects. I understand how complicated things can be, how sideways things can go. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have had that insight or that purview. And so it's just kind of tough to say, and I want to reset the frame to say like, I did a bunch of dumb stuff. So that's why I know what feels easy and what feels hard. At the time, I'm like, this is easy. This is going to be awesome. What could possibly go wrong? And then I found out pretty quickly. So in my investing career today with my wife, we say, okay, well, is it easy? Is this going to be a headache? Is this going to occupy a lot of mental bandwidth? Yep. And if the answer to some of those questions aren't the answers that we want to see, we say, okay, it's a great opportunity for someone else. We don't need to be doing that right now.
Yeah. And I love that. So and the point here is also for the Going Long family, just to understand that Michael is an expert in his field. And so where he's talking about today, things that are easy, it's from a place of practical knowledge, understanding, because he's done that before. There's also, so you can learn from his experience today. And you can also, by making sure that you have a strong educational foundation, you also have people like Michael who are helping to educate other people to do that. So there's that opportunity to learn from his experience on a probably more in-depth way, is another way for you, especially if you're still thinking about getting involved, right? One of the things that happened to me, Michael, is I didn't know that there was a thing called passive investing. So I was, from Barcelona, I was having all these things. I had no systems in place originally.
Yeah.
And yes, very similar kind of thing. So I learned a lot by making a lot of mistakes and then figuring out how to course correct. And then once I did that, well, now today, if I'd say something is much easier, it's from a different place, because having actively invested, passively invested, having done that from, thousands of kilometers away or miles away, it's a very different point of view. So
yeah. Billy, something I just want to say
please.
To the Going Long family. I mean, I think so many people, and you probably see this too, for folks just getting started, they're so concerned with not making mistakes that they never get started.
Oh my gosh.
So
oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
You and I are here talking about splaying our souls out to the world, listen to whoever's listening to the
whole
show,
world.
right?
It's zillions of people.
Let's go big. Let's go long. Let's call it the whole world. And I think you have to do that. You have to be able to be okay with making mistakes, because you're going to make mistakes. I can almost guarantee you that. And so in the insurance world, we know that that's going to happen. And so we say, okay, how do we minimize the mistakes? How do we do the best we can? And then hope for the best, plan for the worst, hope for the best. And once you can kind of get over that and release a little bit and think and agree and kind of come to terms with, I know I'm going to make mistakes. It's going to be okay, because the mistakes I can quantify. So I know what my exposure is. I'm okay with that. This whole process becomes so much easier.
Yeah. So you were literally reading my mind, because the thing that I wanted you to talk about, and I'd love for you to expand on this. You have someone I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm aware of it, at least. So I'm doing things to make that much better, much more efficient, much more effective in terms of giving the strategy for the team, et cetera, right? Engineering background, you understand that. But one of the things that you and I see a lot is analysis by paralysis, looking for the perfect thing.
Only on a daily basis, though.
Right. Only multiple times on a daily basis, right? So maybe there's somebody that's part of the whole world that's just listening or watching us. I'm sure they're watching the video version after that, saying, hey, go check out the video version early on. But the thing is, it still happens all the time. Yeah. So what are some of the things that person who's looking for perfection and really looking at the analysis or feeling the analysis paralysis? Yes, you just said, realize you're going to make mistakes, but can you maybe talk about some of the practical things that you help students with on a multiple times a day basis, so they can start to at least get out of their way a little bit? Totally.
What I always share with folks is you've got to put blinders on to a certain degree. And what do I mean by that? What I share with folks is go pick 4 or 5 markets that you're interested in investing in and do some research, because I promise you there will always be a better market and there will always be a better deal. And so if you're like me and happen to have shiny object syndrome, we can look at this thing and think, oh my God, it's great. Oh, look at this thing. Oh, look at that over there. Oh my God, look at that over there. It's amazing. And so there will, that's never going to go away. We can't evaluate that or analyze that away. And so what we have to do is kind of put on blinders a little bit and say look, let's go find a good deal. And that's the other thing I share with folks is your first deal, probably not going to be a home run, nor really should it. If you find one, awesome. Great, kudos to you. That's amazing. You're 1 in a million. But don't be so caught up with the not failing part, and don't get so caught up with, I have to get the perfect thing because my coach or my mentor, after that person said I got to get 10% out, whatever the reasoning, don't get so caught up with that, because I think it's also a comparison game. So we're putting up blinders because there are other deals, there are other markets, and there are other people out there that are doing different types of things that have different experiences that you might not have yet. And so go get a base hit. And that's what coaches in professional sports tell people to do is go get base knocks, to use a baseball analogy, because that's what wins games. Grand slams are awesome. Home runs are great. But it's the base knocks, the chipping away, that really make the difference. And so I think also when you kind of take a step back and zoom out at the bigger picture, and you really understand what the impact of that one investment is on your life, it start to put things in perspective. And what I mean by that is so many people have this ROI number that they're trying to hit, or this cash flow number that they're trying to hit with every single investment. And it's okay, my goal is 150. Well, this one only meets $137 a month. So it's a pass for me. It's dude, don't get guacamole at your Chipotle for 2 times this month. And that's the difference. Like the investment is still good. Now, that's not to say don't have strict numbers and don't have a strict buy box, but I think you get what I'm saying is you have to put things in a greater perspective.
Yeah. So, I mean, just those very tactical things, which are extremely helpful. So being able to put your blinders on, look, instead of trying to look at every single location in the world, look at 3 to 4 locations. And from there, recognize you have to go deeper. Also making sure that you keep perspective, because this is a moment in time. And over time, you will be able to, and that's one of the things that I love about real assets in general, right? And there are also, that could be one of the drawbacks for most people, because it takes time to develop your plan, to execute your plan, and actually get the results that you're looking for. This is not something that you bet on black and hey, 30 seconds later or 4 seconds later, it either works or it doesn't. Right. You have the opportunity to develop things. So speaking of which, so talking about remote, you talked about using technology earlier. We are going to come to the technology piece, but when you're looking at remote, there's kind of 4 things I usually talk about. And the third one is really the team. So you have to personally understand what you want to do and why you want to do it. You have to go to the location that's going to give you the highest probability. But before you actually get to the specific opportunity or deal or however you want to call it, there's the part kind of almost at the bottom, but it's building the team. When you're a busy, high-paid professional, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm an expert at all this kind of stuff, but I don't have time to build a team. Could you maybe talk to us about what are some of the things that you find are best practice or effective strategies for being able to build the team that can work for, I don't know, just maybe a basic structure? I know you've talked about some of the things that you did personally, and I'm hoping everyone was listening to that, but maybe you could give us a couple other tips on team building.
Absolutely. So I think there's bigger pockets. Guys have coined the term rock stars, no rock stars. And so I think a lot of people get bogged down in, okay, well, I need the CPA and I need the lawyer and I need the property manager, I need the agent and I need this the contractor. Like, while that might be true for a lot of investors, if you're just getting started, that might not be the case for you or for everyone. And so I think it's important to figure out truly for you who's investing in this particular market, who are the folks you actually need? And from where I'm sitting, property manager is like number 1, because they're going to be, if you're using a property manager, which so many remote investors do, they're kind of hands-on day in and day out with the property, and they can make or break the investment. Yeah. So that's where I encourage a lot of people to put a lot of their due diligence and time is developing that relationship. A lot of property managers, by the way, have arms of their business that are also agents, licensed agents or brokers. And so it might be one phone call and you're kind of set up. Not every property manager, but a lot of them do. And so asking the question, hey, who do you do your deals with? Because I would bet you that your property manager probably is also an investor. Mm-hmm. Or if you're not an investor, who do some of your clients use as a local agent? Oh, well, we work a lot with John and John knows exactly what we're looking for, or Mary knows exactly what types of property. So like asking the questions of who do you work with? Who do you like to work with? And then it's simply interviewing those people. And I think we used to use the phraseology in the insurance world, it's trust but verify. Yep. And so if someone you don't know, someone you don't have a trusting working relationship is telling you information, you can trust it, but then you need to go verify it. You don't want to take it at face value. And that's a rule that I broke. I broke my own rule and it's burned me a couple times. And so I think it's really important to get factual information, and people might be wondering, well, how do I discern? How do I know if they're telling me is the truth or not? And you just ask a wide enough selection of people in the area, and you're going to be able to piece it together for yourself. Everyone telling you the same thing. Now, okay, we can take that as truth. But if person A tells you one thing, person B tells you another thing, and person C is like, yeah, they're both a bunch of idiots. Like, you need to figure out how to piece that together and maybe go do some more market research.
Yeah. So having that aspect of being able to trust, but verify, which I think is key. And the few times that I've broken my rule, it cost me not just in money, currency, but also in team member, right? Or members. And ultimately it affected our clients, our end clients, right? Our tenants. And so when you realize that you have certain processes in place, it's a good thing to stick to them and also verify when you are not able to be at a specific location or have a team member in a specific location or something like that.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, technology, right? Because I kind of talked about that a little bit in the beginning. I know technology has been something that has, It seems like the whole world has just realized that there were some certain technologies over the last 2 years, and for many of us, we've been using it for 9-10 years, something like that.
Right.
But talk to us about how you see those that are the most effective as well as efficient long distance investors, remote investors, and how they're using technology, maybe some of the different technologies that they are using to be more efficient and effective.
Yeah. One of the biggest is FaceTime. Any kind of FaceTime app. An agent can walk you through a property as if you're there.
Sorry. Could you just repeat that? Because I want to make sure everybody heard what you just said. Like super basic, really things that we're not talking about, super technology. Sorry, I know I cut you off, but please repeat that one more time.
Yeah. From where I'm sitting, FaceTime. Like FaceTime, Skype, Viber, WhatsApp, any of these FaceTiming apps just have revolutionized the ability to invest and do all kinds of other things, by the way, but invest for me remotely because I can have an agent walk me through a property as if I'm there. And assuming they've got a decent connection and I've got a decent connection, the resolution is going to be pretty killer. And so I can tell them, hey, wait, stop, like go back to the left a little bit and look at this thing. And we really get two sets of eyes in the same property. And it's just allows you to do so much more as opposed to relying on pictures in which things can hide and kind of be covered up. So I think, just FaceTime is great. And another one too, by the way, Billy, that I'm just like a huge fan of is a PDF annotator so that I can sign documents from my computer. Yes. And it looks like a real signature. And so I'm not having to print stuff out, sign it, and then scan it like back or fax it back, whatever. So it's just like as simple and silly as it sounds, it has made life so much easier.
Oh my gosh, those kinds of things. And I'm only laughing and smiling this because the very first property that I purchased was a duplex. I purchased that property. My wife and I, we were in Cairo, Egypt.
Okay.
We bought the property. It was in the state of New Jersey and we live in Barcelona, right? But when we signed it, it was this was back in 2013. So it was like such a big deal. Like we had to figure out, we had to run back to the hotel. We had to go wait for a fax to come in and we were signing this fax and they had to get back to the States between the time that they were at the closing. I mean, It was just like, life has changed so much in that regards. And so being able to do anything, whether it's PDF annotation or doing your electronic signatures, all this other kind of stuff. And also just recognizing that you can use things like FaceTime just to go check out the property yourself with your own set of eyes.
Yeah.
Which is great. Speaking of which, so that sometimes can be a bit challenging if you're going from theory to practice, right? Because now you actually have to know what you're looking for, that FaceTime, and you may not, or you may. And so education comes into a lot of that. But before that, would you consider to be because we talked about some of the upside of being able to combine lifestyle with remote living and long distance investing, remote living, but also what do you consider to be some of the risks for people in terms of that being long distance investors, being remote investors? What would you say to that?
I think truly the biggest risk is being taken advantage of. Having someone recognize that, hey, this person's in Europe, so they must have deep pockets, or in California, so they must have deep pockets, and taking advantage of you, telling you one thing, doing another. And, oh, Billy's not here to physically come check up on me. So while the cat's away, the mice will play, kind of a thing. So I think that's probably what's burned me in the past the most. And I'll tell you, like, truth be told, it was every time my gut told me I probably shouldn't be working with this person, but I felt backed into a corner. I'm on a tight timeline for a rehab. There's no one else that can do this rehab. They've given me the best price. I don't have time to go find someone else. Each and every time I was like, my kind of little internal person was saying, Michael, maybe take a second to think about this. I'm like, no, shut up. It'll be fine. That's when I've gotten burned. Yeah. And so I think if you can approach this knowing full well that it's going to take time, that it's going to take resources, and that you're going to struggle with it, you kind of give yourself an opportunity to not rush into things. And I think that that's probably the biggest mistake and the biggest risk that people are making is they feel this sense of urgency, and it's mostly fabricated. If someone is telling you have to buy it now, you have to, like, don't listen to them. They're a salesperson. They're a used car salesman. Don't let anyone ever pressure you into doing something that you're not comfortable with. By that same token, you've got to go spend the time to get comfortable because you might never be comfortable. So sometimes you have to do what's a little bit uncomfortable to get into the game, but comfortability can be mitigated and risk can be mitigated. And so that I think is one of the biggest risks for folks.
And it's interesting you should say that, because a lot of times, yes, Billy, oh, he's in Europe or in California. You hear that all the time, right? Because people in California are now buying places in different states or different locations, different countries, for instance.
Right.
But so I'm going to go maybe just one thing. I'll share one of my things as well. But like, so when people found out that, hey, look, you're in California and you were just getting started, like, I know that's what you did when you got started, but like now, what are some of the things that you do differently to mitigate that risk?
Yeah, I think it's putting kind of multiple stops in place. So getting multiple team members who have your back, who you have developed trusting relationships with, and you have conversations around accountability and expectations. Hey, if you do this, this will happen. These are my expectations of you. And by the way, I would like to know what your expectations of me are. And it's a very open and honest conversation from day one. So that way, when things don't go with the property manager, I can say, hey, remember when we had that conversation? Like, I don't think this is working out. Let's go our separate ways as friends. It's not a, well, you never said this, that, like, no. And that's hard to do. And it's taken me a lot of years to be able to kind of get to a point where I feel comfortable doing that. But at the end of the day, these are like real estate's relationship-based business. And if someone isn't treating you well in life, you tend to not be friends with them. Same thing goes for business. If someone's not treating you well in business, you don't need to be friends with them. You don't need to give them your business. And you're the boss at the end of the day. And people need to remember that.
Yeah, I have conversations like that many times with friends, with investors. They're like, hey, look, you're the boss. So it's really up to you. You want to be able to do things in a way that makes sense, that continues to make it a prosperous relationship. But sometimes it just doesn't happen. And one of the things that I said I would share as well, and it's very spot on. So when I'm in Europe, it's important as you're developing relationships, you're building relationships, you're making purchases in certain locations, that other people, like people that you're buying a service from or a property from or whatever, that they understand you have a team that's actually there locally. And so just because you don't happen to be there doesn't mean that your team is not there or on the same time zone or can't be there, or the team can be there in a number of hours. So, and that's one of the things that both Michael and I are sharing with you, that it's something that he and I both suffered from. So you don't have to. So think about, as you are going down the long distance investing, the remote distance investing, that you make sure that you know who the team members are that can help you early on, so that you don't run into the same situation that Michael and I ran into early on.
Absolutely.
Did you want to add on something to that?
Yeah, something else I'll say is, so there's other idea, right? Safety in numbers. You don't have to go be the first person to use property manager A or real estate agent B. Look at reviews. Look at what other people are saying. You can be part of like a community and a network. And that's one of the cool things about Roofstock is they've done so much work to already vet out like agents and property managers and insurance contractors. So like, don't reinvent the wheel. Go use the people that other people are already having success with that cater to remote real estate investors. Because if you're the first remote real estate investor that someone's ever worked with, I don't know, it might not go so well. Go use the tried and true method.
Well, exactly. So, and you know what, before we got into the Going Long Final Three, one of the things that I was getting ready to ask you, but you beat me to the punch. I think you're reading my mind here. You're reading my mind, Michael. So here's the thing. So we have talked about it. And we talked about you being the head real estate coach. But talk to us a little bit about how Roofstock, how you're helping not only educate, but get people in the investing game, helping them to feel much more comfortable and confident in doing that in a way, especially for those of us that love long distance remote investing. So we can just understand a little bit more about how you could help us.
Yeah, totally. So the company really kind of came about as a way to help people invest remotely, because like we were talking about throughout the duration of the show, there's just a lot of stuff you have to do as an individual to go get set up in a new market. If you live in Florida and want to invest in Ohio, you got to go build your team there. You've got to go develop relationships, lenders, whatever. So Roofstock has done a lot of that legwork for folks. We can plug you into a network of the professional vendors that you're likely going to need to be successful owning real estate in that given market. And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to go do it all for yourself. And so you can come plug into a network like ours and take advantage of all of those things. So that's kind of the Roofstock side of things. The academy side of things is we wanted to develop an education program, just like you mentioned, to help people avoid the mistakes that we made. And so we said, hey, let's create this program for investors by investors that is really action biased focused and give people the things they need to actually go start investing. Because there are tons of education programs out there. There are tons of folks that claim to be gurus. I would run, not walk, the opposite direction from any one of those people that claim to be a guru. But so we just put this program together that says, hey, let's create a network, create a community, and have a bunch of people running all in the same direction. And by the way, the people that are helping teach the program and guide you and give you advice are in the trenches with you all, investing side by side. So, and I think that's the other really important thing to note is if you are going to go learn from someone else, just make sure that they've done the things you're looking to do and are actively doing the things that you're trying to accomplish, because anyone can talk the talk, but you got to make sure that folks are walking the walk.
Yeah. And I love that last part. Not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And it goes back to, going along family. Michael even mentioned it earlier, trust, but verify. It happens all the time. You see that someone has this great, amazing course, or they've done this, or they've done that. But it's also about how much repeat success has the individual that you are, the individual or the individuals or the company or whatever have done consistently, so that you once again improve the probability of your success. You will, of course, need to take action. Can't get stuck in paralysis analysis, but look for success, consistent success, and then that helps to improve your probability of being able to achieve similar. So, Did you want to add one other thing, Michael?
I think the only other thing I would add, and it's so funny, I'm laughing at myself now, like with these metaphors and these adages, but someone once told me once, never trust someone without a limp, who doesn't have a limp. And what that means is, like, if someone's only had success and that's all they talk about, well, they may have never seen failure. And we know, like we were talking about, it's probably going to happen. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Right.
And the person that has failed knows how to recover from that, knows how to right the ship, versus the person that's only had success, that only knows the good times. I'm not so sure I want to, be with that person kind of long-term, because they're not going to know what to do when things go sideways. And so that's something else to be thinking about, is just because, don't get sold on the people telling you, the best, the big Lamborghini and checks on Instagram, like all that stuff. Like, no, I want to hear about the times that sucked.
Yeah.
Tell me when you got your face punched in,
Yeah. That was the image that came in. As soon as you said that, I was thinking about that old Mike Tyson adage that says, you had the perfect plan until you walked out and got punched in the face. And
got punched in the face.
Okay, well then.
This is real.
What did you? Yeah, this is not just like looks fantastic. This got real really quickly. So
right.
Appreciate you sharing that, Michael. And of course, everybody check out. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in Roofstock, as well as Roofstock Academy. We're going to give you ways to be able to contact Michael and his team here shortly. But Michael, man, look, I can't even believe we already got to the Going Long Final 3.
I know.
I told you we were going to talk forever, didn't I?
I know. It's great. But we got here faster than expected.
Yeah, much faster. So listen, the Going Long Final 3, the thing is, I never ask any of our guests, and today you're our very special guest. I don't ask anyone the Going Long Final 3, and I'm not going to ask you either, unless you tell me that you're ready for me to ask you. So are you ready?
I am ready, Billy. Let's do it.
I knew you would be ready. All right, here we go. So listen, we started with you over on the lovely left coast of the United States in California, Northern California. I like to bring things back over to this side of now it's my adopted home side of the pond.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to share with me and the Going Long family, Michael, and I happen to know you're well traveled. What is your favorite European city that you've either visited or still on your bucket list to visit?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Sagres in Portugal, which is a southern Portuguese city on the coast. It's an amazing surfing town, like seafood galore, amazing weather. Yeah.
It was strange that you mentioned Portugal. So, okay, Sagres, I think we'll go with that one. That's the first time we've heard that, which is amazing. Yes. And that leads us into question number 2. And so the thing is with question number 2, Michael, this has a lot to do with the experience that I've been very fortunate to experience and be in contact with lots of very successful people. I consider you to be someone who's very successful. You've done a number of things. You continue to go out and positively impact people's lives. And the thing is, yeah, man, and I hope that you agree with me, because one of the things that I've noticed about very successful people is they, unlike most, whenever they put a plan together, they go out, they put a plan together, they bring people together, then they start to execute the plan. And one of the main reasons that they're successful is because they, unlike most, they go out and they execute and they get things right the very first time, which then allows them to go into sorry about that.
No, not at all. You okay?
No, yeah, it's good.
I was like, oh no, Billy. Oh no, we gotta call someone, dude.
Everybody, you've got to check out the video version because Michael, he's literally like, oh my God, Billy, can I help you? No, it's a joke. It's just a joke. Don't worry, Michael. Don't worry. He's loving it. This is great. Oh man, he was really wanting to help me. I love it. I absolutely love it. So anyway, listen, I like to have fun here. We like to have fun here on the show. But here's the thing. Of course, really successful people don't get things right the first time or the second time or even the 20th time.
Dude, as you were saying that, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to have to be the one to be like, no, I don't get it right the first time.
I love this. This is fun. So listen. So the thing is, really successful people, they get like 20 to 50 times more mistakes, right? I mean, it's just the reality. And so no one gets things right perfectly the first time. And so the thing that actually happens is because they're trying so many different things, they're making a lot more mistakes. And this is not a joke. This part is serious. But the thing that happens is when those people that are very successful, they do one thing very, very differently. And that is every single time that there is a relevant mistake, learning opportunity, failure event, whatever you want to call it, whenever that happens, Michael, without a doubt, every single time they stop, they learn from that experience, and then they put different strategies, tactics, and actions in place to minimize the probability of that exact same thing happening again.
Yeah.
So today, I don't want you to think about, really dwell on the mistake or the learning opportunity or whatever you want to call it, but really, what is the one lesson that you took away from that experience that you know that the Going Long family needs to know or hear from you today?
I think, and I've said it kind of, we talked about it before, that you are going to make mistakes and that's okay. And that's encouraged. I think too many of us, again, just to harken back to what we talked about before, have this perfection mindset. And I think we live in a society, at least here in the States, that often emphasizes that perfection mindset and says it's not okay to make mistakes. You have to look or be or act a certain way, and anything other than is wrong. I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. Like, go out there, skin your knees, lose your lunch, get kicked in the teeth a little bit, because it makes you a stronger person. And we can calculate and mitigate so much of the risk in this business to a certain degree. There's all things that are outside of our control. But once you get over that hurdle, again, this whole investing thing just becomes so much easier. And go talk to other people, by the way, that are doing it successfully. And so you can hear their mistakes. And you'll be like, oh, I'm never going to screw up as bad as that person. So it kind of sets things in perspective for you.
Yeah. But get out there, make some mistakes. And then also too, I mean, you've got great people like Michael, who've been there, as not just understands the theory, also as a practitioner, and he's giving you access to him, his team, things that he is doing to also help coach other people specifically that are in the remote space. So love that. Thank you very much for sharing that. And then the last of the Going Long final three, Michael, it is really about helping us to feed our minds with knowledge. What is the one book that you would recommend to us today?
Anyone who hasn't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, we talked about it at the very beginning of the show. We're going to bookend it because we're using a book analogy for this discussion for what book we should read. Is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It'll totally, it slapped me upside the head, changed everything I thought I knew about money. Easy book, easy read, just super impactful. And I think you'll find that a ton of other people have read it too and has impacted their lives. So if nothing else, it'll be a great talking point if you don't have any takeaways from the book.
Fantastic. Well, appreciate that. So we'll bookend it. We'll Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that will be our book recommendation. Everybody, don't worry. If you're running on a treadmill or anything like that, we're going to put everything very, very simple for you to find, and just click a link and you'll be able to find all this stuff. So, but Michael, it just flew by. Like, this conversation just flew by. I know. I'm thinking about you talking about where you are in Northern California, although you're from Southern California. And then we very quickly got into you getting your very first property in 2014. Then you get this thing in your mind. You're like, okay, what if I just did this? Like, boom, these numbers make sense. And I could do one of these for the next 10 years. And then things would go really, really well. And then all of a sudden you decided, well, hang on a second. While I'm traveling, I can actually meet with people and figure out how I can not just do one of these, but do a lot more of these and do these really, really quickly. And so you realize you were being able to start to build this in the side hustle. You started making things happen. You even got to a point where you were like, you had those 100 doors in your mind. You're like, I don't care if I'm in Panama, Nicaragua, I'm going to have all these things going on at the same time. And you realize, hang on a second, this probably wasn't the best thing. But as a result of taking so much action, it's allowed you to be in a position to not only understand the theory of what happens, especially as it relates to long distance investing, remote investing. You also are now in a position where you can help others. You are helping other people to understand what are the different steps they can take. We've talked about very practical examples, and I would say to everybody, go back and listen to the exact actionable steps that Michael shared with you. Like all of these different things that you're doing, the way that you continue to help people, the way that you're building your own lifestyle. It's like, oh my gosh, everybody wants to get in touch with you, Michael. So help us understand, what is the best way for the Going Long family to contact you, to be in touch and learn more about what you're doing, and also the Roofstock Academy?
Thank you so much, Billy, for your kind word. I'm over here sitting here blushing for anyone that's watching the video. I'm getting bright red. So you can check us out at roofstockacademy.com. You can come check us out at roofstock.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Michael Albaum. I never thought I'd say those words in a million years. I was not a Twitter guy. My buddy is like, dude, go on Twitter. It's great. Like this whole real estate world out there. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me there, Michael Albaum.
All right. Fantastic. Michael, listen, appreciate it. And Going Long family, really quickly, when you look Michael up, especially on Twitter, we can't do it so much, but on LinkedIn, when you reach out to him, just leave him a personalized invite so that he knows you've already invested time listening, watching. You even saw him blush a little bit there, so that you can continue the conversation. It's going to help the two of you continue that conversation so much easier. So listen, Michael, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This has been a fantastic conversation. Really appreciate you sharing, being vulnerable, and giving us actionable insight. Thank you so very much for investing your time with us, man.
Billy, it was so my pleasure. Thank you for reaching out and having me on. I can't thank you enough for making this a safe space to be vulnerable and share with all your family.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Listen, and if you give me like 15 seconds, Michael, we'll wrap things up and I'll get you out of here. So
I'm in no rush. Take your time.
All right. Perfect. Listen, Going Long family. I mean, I loved this conversation. Just absolutely fantastic. Love getting the insight, especially from another fellow remote investor, practitioner. It's fantastic. So he's giving you a lot of extra things to think about. It's great to have two people that really enjoy long distance investing and being able to build lifestyles around that and help to educate other people. And so listen, take today's conversation, share it with other people. This is one of the best ways. It's just like Michael just mentioned. It's the best way to continue the conversation, talk about different concepts, maybe some of the fears that you have, some of the opportunities that you see. And then while you're doing that, I'm going to be here preparing the next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much.